Tyrannical sadism, that's the one they have. So, the so-called left, again, just some fabrication that's boosted up, that's funded by people to more or less sabotage the democratic politics. It's what oligarchs and tyrants set loose in the public forums and public spaces, and then they pretend like these tyrannical sadist groups, and also spineless sadism. It's a combination of tyrannical and spineless sadism. And then it's essentially astroturf groups that are funded by either the worst people in the world, geopolitical actors with military intentions, which is to say the total and utter elimination of your country, if not the elimination of it, destroying its effectiveness by destroying its social cohesion, by destroying its political leadership, something like that. So it could be outsiders funding these groups, or it could be the insiders, like Fifth Columnists, pretending, you know what, I know this country's culture better than you do, and this country's culture is a culture of shame. It's shameful, you're shameful, shame on you. These type of people, yeah. Social justice warriors are mentioned in the definition of tyrannical sadism. Tyrannical sadism. Do you hear that? Let that sink in. Okay, the other one, I like how they say it. Spineless sadism. Okay, these are words. These are descriptors of personality types. They exist. So who manifests them? Who incorporates them? Who organizes them? Well, not good people. I think we can say that with a surety. Good people can say that with a surety. Bad people would make that a questionable proposition. Well, sadism, they're people too. They have a right to engage in public discourse, right? Let's give them at least, because domination is something sadist is, and let's give them at least 80% of the public space. See, data specialists will look back on this time and they'll look, okay, let's look at these categories of sadism and let's see how much of the public debate was consumed by them. And is it going up during the wartime or going down? What about the pre-war period? Oh my goodness, one of the most despicable years in Western civilization, 2024, 20% of all public discussions are dominated or surrounding sadism, can be defined as engaging with tyrannical sadism. Oops. So what does that mean? Well, I mean, from a cultural phenomenon, just look at all that wasted time. See, again, negative attention horse, this is sadistic as well. Right? They walk in, they're not wearing, right, the super the slick outfit, although they could do that too. See, they have these, what do they have them? Dominas, right? They look super enticing, but of course you can't touch them. They get you down on your knees and whip you type thing. They got that going on. Denial, right? Excitement and denial at the same time. Sadistic, yeah. Lipstick feminist, right? Sadistic. I want to be the boss in this relationship, damn it. Serve me, damn it. Sadistic. Yeah, sadism. Now, of course, super vulgar, stupid, subnormal people, oh, that's cool. Gee, I think I got is that a stiffy I got now thinking about it? Oh dear. Right? But no, you go that way, you're going to get the bad results, sucker. You think that's cute? That's not cute at all. That's bad taste, my man. or woman. There's a lot of them. Oof. Oof. So, okay. So again, as a cultural expert, cultural security expert, you define what you're really dealing with. Like you remove the layers of paint, the camouflage off the BS, the camouflage off the tank. You scratch the surface, and oh geez, this isn't just what it looks like. It's actually a tank. It's a dangerous thing. It's pointed in our direction. Anybody could pull the trigger right now. These are sadist flamethrower troop dressed up like Mickey Mouse. They put on a Mickey Mouse costume, but they got the flamethrower, and they're just pretending to be animators, right? We're animators. We're animators. We're just like you. This is what we do. We have freedom to speak, freedom of speech, right? Freedom to engage in the political process, like your democracy says. Well, this is what we're going to do with it. We got all this money from drug dealers or bankers or goopists, and now let's see how much of the public space we can commandeer for ourselves. So, okay, right? What does a cultural security expert do? Well, this is what we're dealing with, and it should be illegal. Some outfit gets classified as a form of tyrannical sadism or spineless sadism. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years in prison. And any organization that allows it to happen gets fined. Right? So Harvard University sets up some department, it gets sued, let's say $20 million. And everybody involved in the department gets a jail sentence, depending on whatever they did, for however long they did it. They produced 5,000 publications and splattered it into the faces of 100,000 people. You think 10 years in prison is enough for that? Maybe some people don't think that's enough. Maybe it's a life sentence. Depends on how much you prize your political process, right? How much you prize your citizenry, how much you prize democracy, how much you prize civil society. If you don't prize it, if you think it's irrelevant or it could never work anyway because these people are always going to get funding by geopolitical adversaries and we're helpless to do anything about it, and obviously they're just as good as people that are operating in good faith, you do that, well, of course you can't do anything about it. You're helpless. You're a masochist, right? You're looking for someone to attack you. And if someone's not attacking you and you're not engaging with that attack, because of course it's all about engagement, we have to keep our eyes focused on the sadists, because they're really dominating our mood and making us angry all the time, because that's a way of engaging with sadism vicariously, making the issue they want to make. And of course there's no way to solve that. It's hopeless, it's helpless. Nobody can do anything about it. You can't pass a bill like that tomorrow and start rounding them up and collecting the money, collecting damages. Can't do that. Of course you can. Of course you can. All different types of things you can do. But of course the first one is realize what's going on. That's the meta problem, because it's not really framed in the terms it should be framed, which is an assault on civil society, not a part of it. That sadism isn't a good thing. It's not equal. It's an expression of subnormalcy, and it should not be tolerated in civil society at all. So who are the dullards? Who are the parliaments that won't pass that bill, that don't see it that way? Well, get rid of those people. put it to them, like, here you go. Will you sign this anti-sadism bill, social sadism bill? Yes or no? And then publish that. Say, look, we went through to these birds, right? The vultures. We visited vulture 1, 2, 300, however many vultures you have in your damn parliaments. And look at this. These are the 150 birds. And put their names where they were born, you know, their little PR profiles that are probably fake anyway. Say these 150 birds would not sign off on the anti-sadism bill. Okay, let the public know. Be like, dude, hello, yeah, hey, guess what, Michigan? Hey, look at this, you got 2 birds won't sign off on the anti-sadism bill. What the hell happened? What crime families are active there? What did the Russians take over? Who's there? Do you have some type of Chechenian pushing buttons and levers? Who let this happen? Right? You know, like that type of public awareness. Like people start talking. Like, yeah, you're right. They actually didn't grow up here. That mustache, and then you go up like in Scooby-Doo and you pull off the mustache. It's the villain. Oh my goodness. It was the gardener the whole time. How about protests? Like protests outside their office, like, you know, they just got voted in, but then people found out they wouldn't sign off on this bill. They need to go. There needs to be a vote. Like, get a protest. They're not going to be driving back and forth. What are they doing? Like, what type of laws do you think they're going to come up with? They have no spirit, civic spirit at all. They have no civility. They have maybe an ideology that is congruent with tyrannical sadism. What? Like, what? Spineless tyrannical sadism? What? That's their group. Vote them out and call for a vote. Like, they think the vote's going to be in 2 years. The vote is now. The vote is next week, right? The vote is next month. The vote needs to happen because essentially they misrepresented themselves. They have no talent to represent the public. They don't have any ethics. They don't have any moral values. They don't have anything that would legitimize them as authorities in a civilized society. That's it. So you can't vote them out. No, they're going to call the police on you, because that's how sadists like to flip things. Okay, what are they going to do? Start shooting the people? Like in Maidan, 100 people dead because they wouldn't put themselves up for a vote. They wouldn't start the referendum process. Is that right? Is this the government? This is the people you pay taxes to? Is that right? Well, then, you know what? It can spread. Then maybe the whole state, the state legislator, that maybe the police department needs to be changed out. Like the chief with the funny hat with all the crime around that then shoots, 10 people that were calling for a vote on an anti-sadism bill. How's that look for them? Like, imagine that hits like the international wires or the whole country, or some people that don't think that's funny. What's going to happen to them? Are they going to be able to just stop by some place and when people get to know who they are and what they look like? You think that's how it works? They might think that's how it works. But that's not really how it works, is it? But, of course, spineless sadism has its net effect, doesn't it? If they can get the group to, or give you the impression that they're in the majority, then that's how they are going to gang up on you, keep you from doing the right thing, if they can manage it. And these geopolitical monsters, if they feel that one of their or two of their groups are are not strong enough, they're going to put the funding for 2 more or 3 more, however many more they can get in that place at that time. They'll pull them all from the entire nation, like bust them in from the West Coast to Florida, if that's where it's going down, or Michigan. But guess what? Cover that too. Let the feedback, let the public know, okay, here are the buses. So there's 100 of them that came in from here. Document that for history. Follow them back. Like they then drive back, they think it's over, but it's not really over, is it? So now they're back here, and this is what they're doing there. Right? Tyrannical sadism here. This is what it looks like there. This is their buzzards and vultures here. See? That's a way of interacting with them too. It's like, okay, you thought we were gonna take this at face value, but actually those days are over. So, this little hateful ride is up for debate. But I encourage people, look into it, and then look into identifying them and realize tyrannical sadists, I think this was one of the important points, is they don't believe that you can be redeemed. They don't. Sadists don't do that. See, you're a big person. You believe in redemption, right? You might have Christian values. They don't. So just by saying that they're bad people, that's it. There's no redemption for you. They've ideologically canceled you. And if they can physically do it, and also torture and humiliate you, that's what they're dead set on doing. And they're not the type of people that will let you redeem yourself. That's why they're into this cancellation. It's like cancellation is final, right? You might have been 18, you might have just been angry at something, and they're never going to forgive, and they're never going to forget. And you're just going to be a permanent enemy for them, and they're going to operate off the basis of that. And there's really nothing you can do to redeem yourself to a sadist. You can't. But see, the masochist is stuck in that delusion that they think that if they fulfill what the sadist says, then they're going to get something. But that's not how it works. It's just more pain, it's more suffering. And getting off on that, or to using that as a supply, is really perverted, disgusting, and counterproductive. That is not the way to heaven, friends. But that is the way to hell. So don't even go one step in that direction. If you have to stand for a long time, do that. And then if you can, real quick, turn on your heels and run. That's what you do. There is nothing you can do for them. How can you redeem people that don't believe there's any redemption for you based on sadistic principles, right? Like, it's over. You got people like that. This is the realm of tribulation. But being able to identify them and then know, okay, this is them. They wouldn't be engaging in this behavior if they didn't have this personality disorder, essentially. But it's a disorder from the standpoint of civilized society. But look, civilized society is an ideal. It's not a reality. You got 100 people, 2 could have this. Now, under normal conditions, if they showed up or tried to play something, they would get canceled themselves for good reason. But in these cultural warlike times, they're promoted and protected by other sadists. And so it really is important that their whole network is exposed, because otherwise it does create distrust, yes. If a society tolerates this, then the society is guilty of not acting appropriately. And so is ergo defunct. That's why social trust plummets under these types of conditions, which is what warlike actors know. Psychological terrorists, essentially, and so that's why they're doing it, that's why they're funding it, and that's why their fifth columnists sign off on it. They're buzzards. So expose the buzzards and vote them out. Let people know in your civic circles that that's not tolerated. Block people. Don't read their content, delete their comments. And be advised that they're looking for people to support them in their spineless sadism campaign. So it's a bigger problem than people are right now willing to admit. But that doesn't mean we're never going to turn the corner on it. Don't accept these preconditions. This is a deliberate form of cultural vandalism that leads to cultural contamination and cancellation. And then, as I've said many times before, it really doesn't matter if your country exists, if your culture's been canceled. You're living in an atmosphere of tyrannical sadism. Is that your country? Who told you that? Like, is that where you belong? I don't think so. But yeah, countries can get taken over for a time. It can also, again, be some type of complex. They're just being used as the wrecking crew. The people that want to be sipping mojitos poolside, they have nothing to do with that at all. They're just wealth guarding, essentially, as a rotten class. Which is why they can go too. Like, because you bring it, the public brings it to the attention of the administrators, and the buzzards get out. But if the buzzards get replaced, then you have to work upstream. Who are the big buzzards then that are? Is it is it somebody outside, or is it really some type of embedded fifth column, or just native sadist faction that is at work? Because if it is, that's what you got to deal with. That too. You got to deal with both. But one way you don't deal with it is just by accepting it. Or certainly not accepting them at face value. And or engaging with it. Like right now, you can classify it. This is just keep looking for tyrannical sadism, but don't engage with it. Classify it, detach from it, identify it, and take proactive steps of shutting it down. Like this, it should be illegal, but it isn't. So it's illicit at this point. But with a bill that makes it illegal, that's when you can start making progress. That's what your governmental system should do. And if it doesn't, you need to get the people in that can do that. And again, these sadists, they will just keep going. They have been active now in the Western world, unidentified criminals, essentially for now decades. The amount of damage they've caused is unquantifiable. And they will just continue and grow because they have deep pockets behind them unless you stop them. And it needs to be done legally. It needs to be done across the board. It needs to get out of academia. It needs to get out of the social sciences. It needs to get out of the public debate. It needs to get out of the information space. But it doesn't happen by accident, right? Sadists, turbocharged sadists don't just appear out of the blue. And so your responses shouldn't be out of the blue either. I think, I think another way of looking at it, if you're looking at, let's say, the spectrum from democracy to illiberal democracy, and then later stage democracy, which is more towards illiberal democracy. And why is that? Well, because you get vested interests that just want to run the government as their own money printing machine, their own legitimacy, purposes, right? They might have funneled off. They might have companies set up, or people, networks of people that have companies set up that are relying on government contracts, right? You have, of course, the banking sector that is essentially illegal in most countries. If you define illegality as something that is not in the interest of the people, which is sort of how you should define illegality, but they don't do that. So that's why they need people in an illiberal democracy that will make sure that that doesn't even ever come up to a vote. People don't have enough time to think about the parameters of the system they're in that's working for other people, not for them. So you get those vested interests. You get the proxies that are being, essentially lawyers that are on retainer, but they also have a government position and they're serving special interests, if you want to just see it that way. Well, from their perspective, they feel like they've got government under wraps. They have enough to do, right? They have to get themselves dressed in the morning and they have to pick out suits and they got to do little photo ops. They're busy. They don't want to deal with real problems. Like that retainer fee is high. I mean, it's way higher than what they should be making. I mean, essentially they should be busting big rocks into little ones. So they might know that on one level, some level, but they still don't want to do too much work, like listen to people, try come up with real solutions to real problems. So for them, it really is better if the public is just being run around in circles with all these psychological warfare games. Like for them, it's a break. They get a break, right? Everyone's talking about Buddhism all day. And essentially, I think data specialists, like cultural security specialists, can go through the data and then just look on the basis of what was the public debate, how much of it, in retrospect, can be classified as total nonsense or a smoke show. People whizzing themselves about sexually related issues, for example, that have no business in any type of political discussion, civil society. It's just noise. So you say, well, okay, in this time, in this city, dominated by these political operatives, essentially 70% of the public debate was contaminated with nonsense, just mostly smoke of an agitatory, maybe tyrannical, sadistic, tyrannical, or spineless, sadistic nature. And again, the retainers in Parliament siphoning off funds for illicit businesses and keeping things nailed down. Less work for them. And they're kicking the can. They've got one life to live. They're going to live their best life. This is the best job they could ever hope to have, they feel, as long as the public isn't engaging them in any type of debate about changing things that might be difficult for them, because they'll have to knock on the despot's door, say, sorry there, Mr. Toad, King Toad, and co. But the people want taxes to be reduced by 10%, something like that. Everyone's complaining that the economy's falling apart. So we have these suggestions. King Toad, depending on his mood that day, might just say, "Get out of here! Don't ever come back." Right? You disturb my pedicure. So, didn't I tell you not to disturb me? What is it? Right? Here, filmmakers, come on, there's so many. We could just, it could be hilarious. See, I don't think, who was it? This guy, was it Ali? Is it David Cohen who did The Dictator? Who's that with the beard? Portrayed a dictator. That's his version is corny compared to the way it could really be done using Western examples. And just pick your country. How about they meet, like these diplomats, they like to meet in different venues. Like they have, where is it, Brussels? Or like to meet, maybe, the Olympics, show them at the Olympics, wherever it's sort of high profile, sort of conference of do-nothingists, virtue signaling about nothing. And then just the dialogue, just think how that movie could write itself. But base it on Western figures between 1990 and 2000, and let's just say 25. Let's give ourselves a little time to work with. Like loosely based on them, because of course, these are really dangerous, toxic, and destructive people, so, there can't be any direct connection to them. But make them look as goofy as they do in real life, and then give them the dialogue that really lets other people know how little they care about the public, as examples par excellence for malignant narcissism in our day. Textbook examples of that. And again, a lot of people have problems because they have no legitimacy, like they aren't aristocratic at all, but they really think they are. They're sort of like a new form of it because they say so. I mean, we got satellites out there, people, but these are the people essentially in space orbit as far as deluded concepts of self go. I mean, we're talking gas balls that have exceeded the Earth's atmosphere. But again, a lot of them are behind closed doors. You just see the retainers in Parliament. But it would be nice if there was more journalism that would connect the dots between the retainers and the toads that run them. Because it really, I think it is historically important that the toads of our time are dissected in great detail, like granular, fine detail, like a 360 ultrasound scan is done of all of their internal organs, so that they could also be used maybe by future people for, if they want to cast villains and incompetent, greedy, pig-like monsters, then they could be used in a whole bunch of different comedic roles. For example, Crassus, we know him, so thank Plutarch for that he gave us a little bit more of a description of Crassus, so we can relive that tragedy of that time with a lot of distance and a lot more insight. But today, they're all about, all around us, all over the place. We have a greedy culture, materialist. Ugh. Just thinking about it just makes I could just throw up just thinking about it. See, even Romans, were Romans really as materialistic as these people today? Secularists, atheists, billionairists, tyrannical sadists, spineless sadists, a combination of tyrannical, spineless sadists, something like that. Oh, it would be nice. There has to be 100 examples. So how about the top 100 despots of today? Come on, journalists. Start taking some Polaroids and putting together some profiles for us rubes out here. How about some former retainers? If you got fired by some of them, drop the dime on them for us all. Because it really does add to the tapestry of this dimension, the devilishness of it, that we can appreciate the devilishness of it more by having the details, not just the appearances. And how boring are proxies, finally. They're just really not even close to the real thing. Although perhaps we're giving them more credit than they deserve if it's just sadistic neglect, for example, that we're dealing with, which is also a form of sadism, neglect. Not doing the right thing on purpose. Just not doing anything, just letting the economy die, let people run around the streets, homelessness, who cares? You know? Or in fact enjoying that, right? The more poor people, the richer you feel. That's a human trait that they've recognized. Like if most people are poor in the country, they'll accept a lower wage as long as it's proportionally higher than the per capita. So they would take 50,000 if the per capita is 500 instead of like 150,000 if the per capita is 100,000. Because they want to feel special, right? Special, better. I'm up, you're down. In the ape pyramid, I'm higher than you. I'm a classist, you're a bourgeois. Little ape games. High-tech ape games. High-tech chimps. Oh, that could be my next book. High-tech chimps. And the toads behind the screens. Screen toads and high-tech chimps. Man, if I wrote that book, would you buy it? Could you send me $1? Could I hold $1 for that book? Well, here's the thing. Real culture gets canceled in sadistic, toxic, inverted cultures. So they certainly wouldn't want to give you the opportunity to give one of those bucks to someone who deserves it. That doesn't, sadists don't wix themselves to that idea. It's rather the opposite. They send the poets to Siberia. That gets them off. Sending the prophet's head in on a silver tablet, that's what makes them feel really good about themselves as sadists that don't think you're redeemable. That's the thing. You see, some people can be so Christian, so good on some level, that they'll always have that belief that everyone is redeemable, but see, sadists don't share that belief. And it's really hard. It's like you believe in gravity, gravity keeps you on the ground, they don't have it, they're flying around. They enjoy hurting people, and they do it, and they think that you're irredeemable on the basis of ideological variables that were pulled out of a cauldron of toxicity, the slime of human psychology. And there's, nothing you can do about that except see it for what it is. There it is. Here's this person with a baseball bat that just took a swing, and then you duck. They missed. That's today. This is Tuesday. So what will be Wednesday? Maybe Wednesday won't have that person. And then it's on to the good things. You see, you always have to watch. The more sadism that they spray into the atmosphere and institute and manifest, the harder it is to not engage with it, especially if you're a sensitive person. Like you're a cultural person, you're someone who's, let's say, not interested in being constantly engaged in sadistic gambits, then it really becomes hard the more toxic the environment is. But again, are you engaging in it? If you are, you have to stop it. You have to break the causality. Yes, these people exist. Yes, they want to be the center of attention. Yes, they want to hurt other people. But they're certainly not the only show in town, and they should be relegated to nothing. Essentially, if they're in public office, you need to get them out. If they don't want to go, you need to protest until they do. And that's just it. Now, as far as your personal life or private life or whatever else, if you can disengage, then do that, because certainly not going to change them for the better. And they want your attention, they want your engagement, they want your wasted time, they want your wasted mood. Here you are in Moscow, banging on the glass, boom, 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 give me the ticket, boom, 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 boom. And there's that face with those penciled on eyebrows and painted on lips, looking at you like a bird. Я не знаю. That's engagement. That's engagement. Who's engaging who? Who's got the power? Who's got the power? The poor people. Poor people, close to poor. But yeah, we live in a bountiful universe. Keep your mind clean. Keep your spirit free. Keep your ideals and thoughts and everything else in the heavenly realms. But let's come back to the idea of friendship again. So we could craving friendship, craving an idealized version of friendship. That creates a matrix for suffering, like, because you're idealizing what would be the perfect friendship, and then you're coming back to the realization that you don't have that, but then you want that, and that, you see, is basic unskillfulness. That's basic disappointment that you're creating for yourself based on your desires and your imaginings of what would be a better friend, or wouldn't it be great if they were here and then I wouldn't be bored. Well, they're not your entertainer. You need to already be operating from a state of contentment. Otherwise, how can you be a friend to others if you cannot meet them on that basic non-committal type of relationship? Like, it's good you're here, but if you leave, it's also good. Right? If it's good for you, if it's your destiny that you must be here, that's good too. This universe is neutral. But if you have the same level of equanimity that I have, we are friends in that way. That is high friendship, isn't it? That is high level. Noble friends, that is the noble friend. And as far as Ajahn Mun is concerned, I read what he wrote. He left as a good friend his words. Now, not all of them have been translated by good friends in a perfect way, but still, I read his books and I can feel that friendship when I read, but I'm not reading it all the time. Imagine if you think of books as just like emails or text, the pages. I don't have to be reading the book all the time to enjoy that friendship. It's a friendship that gives to me even when I don't feel like I'm involved in it or engaged in it on a personal level. I can experience mudita, well-wishing. And so it's the friendship of freedom as well. Because I understand that Ajamun has left this dimension. But again, he left it in such a powerful and elegant and subtle way that his words can still be found and were. And so that is real tiger style. See? Some people think, yeah, that's not normal, that's not possible. That's tiger style. Try to understand that. How is that possible? Yeah, tiger style. No, focus on being a good friend to yourself by eliminating desire for things you do not have, or wants in general, and disappointments. Because how could you be a friend for someone else if you're still being consumed by that cancerous type of way of thinking? And the sooner you start this practice, if you're a young person, the better for you. You will go like a straight arrow straight to the center of the target, and you will travel that way. And these thoughts and desires for this and that won't throw you off course at all. You will fly with the forward momentum of pure detachment. This label, loneliness, they say this is some problem with young people. You see, this is just a false framing. Imagine you have a bunch of over-socialized people that are looking at Siddhartha go into the jungle and not return, and then say amongst themselves, he must be so lonely. But this is how Patugenists think. He was not lonely. He was not lonely. He was a lot of things, but he was not lonely. So we have to watch the social frames that we develop and unnecessarily create suffering for ourselves because we feel like we're being diminished because we're not apparently liked by a group of people that are perfectly random. They've just randomly been put into a majority in your mind, essentially. Because there's people right now with all these different types of mental audiences screaming at them, telling them that they're not good enough. But they're doing it to themselves. They just don't realize it. They haven't gotten that far down the practice that they can catch themselves doing that and stop doing that. So you can think of that in terms of social conditioning, right? It's the concept of a social construct, and you're conditioning to see things from a group perspective when in fact your perspective is something you need to develop without that type of conditioning. Yes, other people exist, yes, there's such a thing as society, but really it's individual practitioners, and there are skillful practitioners and not so skillful practitioners. But that doesn't really matter to you, does it? Do you watch your neighbor when he brushes his teeth and correct him on how he's doing it, or do you focus on your own practice? How many times do you brush your teeth per day? Did you think once a day is enough? Maybe it's not. Maybe your brush isn't very skillful. Maybe there's better materials to use. Maybe there's baking soda. Maybe there is dental floss. Like, how far do you want to go with the concept of oral hygiene? Right? Maybe you have your two teeth are crooked here, so you have to use this special technique. But they don't have that, so they have standard technique. You see how absurd that can be? If you're making comparisons, mental comparisons, I'm lonely. If you have solitude, if you have your monastery, your 1 meter monastery that walks with you wherever you go, you're practicing, you're okay. You've attained solitude, which is what the Buddha said was essential for practice. And it is. You can't have everything that you think you want and need and have a good life too, even though that's how it's being sold. So you get the supermodel girlfriend, the Lamborghini, the penthouse, the helicopter, right? And then what? 2 hours later, that could be a funny film as well. Like how disappointing it is at the top. It's as disappointing at the top as it is at the bottom. It just really depends on your perspective. People on the bottom that understand the spiritual dimension and use it as practice, that's good practice, actually. It's much better than comfortable practice that doesn't get results. Because a lot of you knuckleheads out there, you think your practice is good enough, but it isn't. You need to prepare for the real challenges in life. You think you've been challenged because your parents dissed you. They didn't buy you a special bike you wanted. There's challenges ahead there, young man and young lady. So practice now and dispense with those foolish thoughts, foolish desires, foolish cravings, foolish energies, too crazy, crazy horse syndrome, monkey mind. A lot of you, if you learn the practice now, you could have it your life long and your mind will calm down and you'll have a very strong practice because you started off in the condition that you did, which was crazy as it gets. Bouncing off the walls crazy. You would develop practice under those conditions. You're going to be one hell of a fighter at 80 if you get there. It'll be like intuition. You'll move like that, real slick. Won't even touch you. Something come at the knee level, that leg is up. You didn't even look. It was intuition. So you have that type of practice later. But where the rubber is meeting the road, where things are burning and smoking, yeah, it's hot. It can get real hot. This dimension will test you. You think you've been tested? You haven't even begun to be tested, most likely. 1,000 oak steps, they hurt, each one. I didn't know it was 1,000 steps until later. Took me 1,000 steps, but it takes other people 10,000 steps. 10,000 lives. So where are you? You might just be at the top of the staircase, but you also might be at the bottom. It really depends on you and your practice. It depends on insight. It depends on satori. Right? It depends on sadhana. All the time, sadhana. You're not lonely sitting in your car. You're in a unique place in the universe. You're just not really aware of it because your mind is jumping around in the bushes looking for things to get mad about. But look right there. Look in front of you. Look at that. Look to the left, right? Take a look. Try to take it all in. Look forward. Try to take it in. Look to the right. Try to take it in. Now turn around. Look behind you. Look at how many things you're not looking at or didn't know. How much more of that could you absorb if you looked at it longer? And see, then you would be there and not in this mental space that is driving you crazy. right? But it's not you driving yourself crazy, it's just bad practice. You're focusing on the wrong things, you're awfulizing, you're over exaggerating, you're focusing here instead of there. That's the problem. You've got your hand, you're sticking it in the fire. Pull it out. Right? Take it under a cold stream of water, let it chill out. Let it cool down, let it nibbana. You've got that practice, you're going to be doing very good for yourself. But see, the fire is not just on a nice little candle that you can just use your 2 fingers and put out like better practitioners do later in life. You might have a bonfire. What do you got to do? You have to start stamping. You have to use a different style. You have to use fire style. There you go. You want to get back to primordial style. Fire style, that's one heck of a style. You master fire style, you can put out big fires. Have you ever seen simple, not so smart people try to extinguish a fire that was much bigger than they thought it was going to get, but they had no other choice? And so they just used the skills that they had, which was not good choice because they ended up making things worse. Right now, somewhere on the planet, somebody is burning up alive because of their bad practice, their lack of skills in fighting fires. But if you have fire style, you can put the fires out, the big ones. Thermoboring fire style. Boom. But you probably can't put out your trash can. Trash can's on fire, you throw it over, it rolls, things fly everywhere, you end up burning down the whole house. That's your fire style at this point. But you don't have to stay there, you have to stay with the practice so that you can develop fire style. Coming back to my man Seneca. Hunger is cheap. It's taste that's expensive. It's the palate that's expensive. This doesn't taste good enough, so I want that for $1,000. You spit out the rice that Siddhartha ate and was content with. Not good enough for you. You need more. That's too simple. It's too simple. It takes care of hunger, too simple. It's too healthy, right? Too cheap. Too almost free. In his case, it was free. People came and brought Siddhartha food. They didn't let him go hungry. In fact, you can imagine like the generosity towards Siddhartha, that paid itself back through the lives in a good way. If his theory holds up, if we can just believe him instead of have to think things through to a point that we'll finally accept. That's at least a distinct possibility. That's a great thing when someone like Siddhartha can practice unhindered by the world for 45 years straight. I think there's something to be said for his practical practice as well. Because the conditions, you think they were easy. I think you don't know what conditions were like 2,500 years ago, but I tend to think they could have actually been more difficult in some areas. Also more terrible, like people just dying, melting away from leprosy all over the place, and other things. So you think you've experienced the horrors that he experienced? And yet, 45 years of straight practice. Because you really do. You need to think of every day it's a boxing match. Somebody's is gonna throw a punch at you. Somebody you didn't even see it coming. It's grandmama. And pow, right in the face, right in the choppers like that. Right? Maybe it's a comment she said years ago that comes back to you that does that to you. See, we are spiritual beings. We live in a materialist society that doesn't want us to really know that all too much. They want us to get back to work, get a job. And I guess that's sort of good advice sometimes, especially when you don't have anything and you're a young person, perhaps. I think it's difficult. It's always difficult. I think some of my most challenging times were certainly as a young adult. Certainly. Because you're doing also some type of transition. It's almost akin to midlife crisis. It's sort of an adult crisis. This transition between leaving your parents' home or leaving what you knew and embracing so-called an adult life, and it's challenging. People are getting suckered left and right. People are given bad advice on a mass scale at this point, like the exact opposite of what you should do and think. That's what they're told what to do and think for malicious reasons, and it's deceptively packaged. So we didn't have that in the 80s and 90s, not a lot of it. I mean, there were weird, toxic, hateful, destructive subcultures, but they were not mainstream. And you had to go into the gutter to find them. And if you were already there, well, you probably did a bunch of things to end up there, and that was just the last step on your descent into the dungeons and hell realms. But did they mainstream it? That was sort of something that's taken a lot of people by surprise, and it's still considered to be, normal thing. People are starting to question it, but not fast enough, because the people who pushed it in the first place probably still don't think they did anything wrong. Because who would do something like that and still think they deserve some status points and want to maintain status? And however unreflective one is, how many crimes one has already committed that might have had like real effects in the real world, that have manifested all different types of terrible things. Because telling young people to do the wrong things at that time, that's a very, 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 very bad thing to do. Because they're apt to believe you because they don't really know what they're doing. So these things have had really bad effects, and it's sort of an ongoing thing. So, but I don't like to awfulize either. I think everyone does have agency. It's mostly via the screens, right? Of course, there's behavioral implications of what people pick up, what type of contagions they pick up on these networks. But finally, if we come back down to the basic principles of Siddhartha, is the basics are still there. The psychological truths are there. So craving, you want something, like me right now. I would rather have a perfect world where all of my values are reflected in the general culture. But that's just a desire, right? But coming back down to earth for a second, psychology, yeah. So you have a problem believing what Siddhartha said, fine. Look at that to just get sort of a snapshot of your personality type, or something that you could be on a spectrum too, if you didn't take right effort and didn't apply right practice to remedy those imperfections. Like, for example, completely neutral, back in my bad old days, I had a problem with anger. Like the simplest of things, just things that would not anger other people, would just throw me for a loop. And that's not a good characteristic to have. Some people are laughing right now. It's not funny. Like, especially the older you get and the more dangerous it becomes. Because certainly your family might laugh about it or think it's cute, but I'll tell you who doesn't think it's cute is people out there in the real world that have real problems and don't need nobody losing their temper because of one little trifling thing, which might have been just their banter, like a playful banter that you misunderstood, and that's why somebody is now calling the ambulance. And it might be for you because you might have done something stupid and then somebody else came out of somewhere and busted a 40 over your noggin. So these things can spiral out of control, so there's nothing funny about that. So you know what's good practice? Good practice is disposing of anger where it starts, which is inside, in the mind, in the subconscious processes, in the way we're perceiving things, in attitudinals, in associations, in desire, in aversion, those types of things. But of course, if you can't see it, you don't know those things are in play, you can't address them. And so a lot of people have ignorance of these things, and that's why they're so damn unskillful. But they don't have to stay that way if they practice. But yeah, people aren't just sitting down to an organ in a cathedral and playing Bach perfectly, are they? But there are those that can do it. I recommend you do it. To go out right now and find look at 2 or 3 different performances and try to gain insight. Not just into the practitioner, but into the airy sounds, into the peal and toll and resound of the sound, of the potential harmony in this world and the worlds to come. The implications of spineless sadism shouldn't be underestimated. That essentially, if you have these hate groups, they're genocidal, they're appropriationist, they're ready to ride whatever system you have straight to the bottom, and with geopolitical adversaries, they're on board with them. And when you're gone, they'll make a deal with them, or maybe not, or maybe they'll be there for a couple of decades, or maybe centuries, because they wouldn't have had anything other than the crappy places they came from if they didn't take a deal, and they did. So this is how they're doing it. So we took over your political institutions, and now we're going to take out free speech and information and the police and the economy and whatever else we can take out until whatever, there's some proper military forces show up somewhere in Yemen, for example. Who knows who's guarding the coast out there, what ships are coming and going. If they want to send something there, they'll bring people with the right hardware, otherwise they'll leave it. And if you're there, well, you're just going to have to see how you survive. And some people do. Many thousands of people live in there. But how they organize things or how they don't, that's really up to them. Maybe it's not as bad as you think. Living essentially in an undeclared war zone with civilian authorities on their side, at least partially, maybe regionally, municipally, city here, city there, region here, region there, capital city here, capital city there. So 95.5, yeah, and coming back to spineless sadism. So first off, here's something you can really just know and make amends or heal, is that they don't believe you're redeemable. This is a personality defect they have. So you're not redeemable in their system, right? Their system is a total fabrication. It's a total transparent lie. Upon further inspection, they don't profess, they only profess the universal values that they espouse as a propaganda mechanism. Life will be so much better for you if you do. If you do that, they win. Like, they come in, you go to jail, and they do whatever the hell they want, which is a lot better than having to shoot you, at least from their perspective. So if they can talk you into it, sweet talk you into something they want, well, then that's what they'll do. So they have sort of that going on a civilian level. It's undeclared, it's organized from abroad. And they're in broad daylight just acting, play acting, that they won an election, they have these positions, they're supposed to take care of policing, but it's two-tiered. Right, their gated community, that's covered. Wherever you are, maybe not. Though they might not even get around to counting the bullet casings if they don't want to. Like, maybe it's 50 people they don't want having filmed. Like 50 people that they just pulled off a bus because they could. You're gonna trust, like, the journalists that they pay, or people associated with them pay? This city's really safe. Where'd all the people go? Oh, I don't know. Different day, different reason. I never saw those people in the first place, right? You don't think it's beyond sadist to do something like that? So the other thing is they've just arbitrarily put you into the oppositional box. So on a global scale, how many skunks do you have out there that you know of? Well, I'll just let you know that there's at least 5 skunk groups, but probably more, that would do that to anyone, anywhere, at any time, if they could get away with it. Because they're like that. Basically the lowest of the low. Maybe people that have impenetrable parallel religious societies where they don't care if non-believers get slaughtered, something like that. They can stay internally consistent and just destroy everything outside the core, protect themselves, have their own policing. They have their own laws, their own people, and their own culture of snitching and crime and whatever else they want or can get away with, because they don't have any damn morals. But for their white monkeys or operatives or people that are leveraged or on the take or have big egos and think they want to be on the winning side or something, whatever they need them to say, they'll say that, so that you just keep doing what you're doing, and you might miss some type of criminal escapade, you might not, right? Your kids might miss it, they might not. Sort of up to them, like how many steaks they can eat in a day. Maybe they're associated with global operations, like it's just like a collection racket, and people then disappear and get sent somewhere else, or who knows what. Nobody's paying attention. People paying attention are letting them do it. So you could maybe think, maybe they're on their side, maybe not. Maybe they're just incompetent, because they'd rather have you believe that than they're in on it. But it's really a matter of definition. You have to know all the facts, but you don't know that because they don't want you knowing what they're doing. It's working for them, that's the main thing. In their backyard, there's no dead bodies and trash and drug needles and bullets. That's all they care about. And all those thousands, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dead bodies, they have nothing to do with that, they think. Yeah, let's not forget they don't like feedback, they don't like criticism. Anything that a malignant narcissist doesn't like, they don't like. Because guess what? You just figured out who they are. You just need to place the names and the dates, the birthdays, and the death certificates, and you have your diagnosis. You don't need to know really who they are. It'd probably be better to know where they are, how they got there, but if they'll remain there. That remains to be seen, because then it's other ones like them that will come for them. Their paranoid fantasy will come true. So it is a luxury of good people, innocent people, not to live in hell before you go to hell. And that is certainly where they're going. So all of their callousness, they're also impenetrably ignorant. So just think of them like a bullet being shot into the abyss. None of your suffering makes any dent on them at all. In fact, if it does, they think it's like the champagne of victory. Like they think it's the sound of defeat or something like that. They misinterpret these things as a win for them. If they're really sadistic, like they really hate good things, in other words. Which is like, there's lots of people like that in toxic times like these. Especially the mercenaries that they have here, or PMCs, however you want to call them. Just run around here with impunity. So where these people hang out, they don't know, they don't care. They're not in your neighborhood. They're not in where you're at. They're doing quite well for themselves, very separated. And they like what they have, and they want a lot more. And they're on the way to do that by any means necessary. Sort of continuous campaign like. So they have they have no connection to you at all. Right? If anything, it's like a hostile connection. Alienated, distanced, worrisome connection with a class that is like objectively superior and popular and good, but they're not that at all. Worrisome, nerve-wracking. Acting and being someone that is diametrically opposed to their like non-moral way of living, like predation on good people, type distance from those types of people that make decisions because they're powerful and want to prove it that way by oppressing and distorting otherwise accomplished and free social situations, economies, politics, culture, you name it. You're having an art exhibition, they'll show up, make sure no artists get exhibited, and they trash the joint. They have a party like with a lot of different wine bottles and suckers and cigarette butts, and then the next day that's the exhibition. It's a it's an impromptu thing. All of it was random chance. Called The Cleaning Lady Didn't Show Up on Time. And that's 10 a.m. On Sunday in Paris, in the best neighborhood, because that's the kind of capers they're pulling off in their on their level of malignant narcissism, which, if you're looking at like world scale, that's pretty high. Some people would give them props for that. Well, I didn't give them props for it in the day, but that type of spirit of vandalism is all over the place. So less accomplished goons and villains do even less accomplished things and even care less than the people did it back then in Paris. Or are probably doing it right now. Some version of that in essentially captured cities, like captured in everything but them admitting it. So, and then, like I said, a spineless sadism means you're probably on a list, blacklisted. Like they always cry about whatever, the 40s or whatnot, when liars were being called out for it. But they do it for real. They've probably done it to hundreds of thousands, millions of people. Doing it right now. So you don't have a job, that's why. It's not your right to know. It's like it's a credit report they've cooked up for themselves. And so that sticks. So when haven't they done this in places they've controlled? Well, the answer is none. This is their standard operating procedure, and this is their spineless sadism at work. Just let you starve, just to let you be a failure despite what you could do. It's not really important because they're more into the paranoia, control, and extermination game. There was a cool example of that. Some guy, they had like a piano in a shopping mall, like a grand piano. And a pianist came in and just gave an impromptu like concert. And it was really, really good because he was a really good practitioner. Some different group from China, like a bunch of PMCs was there. Say, hey, you need to stop. Stop playing. And they came up with some funny reason there. There was like a group of them just insisting that he stop playing the piano. So cultural suppression, that's what it is. Like Westerners are like, why are they doing this? Like, why aren't they congruent? Why aren't they consistent with their multiculturalism jazz? Well, that was just cocoa pebbles for suckers, I hate to tell you. That nothing about what they say is consistent about what they do. Well, we're not going to militarize South China Sea. Sure, yeah. All different types of airports, missiles, nukes. So who bought that hook, line, sinker? Well, same type of professional suckers that are pretending to be your administration. Have different directives, two-tier monitoring, two-tier discrimination. Oh, the threat is this, the threat is this. That's the big lie. That's what they're attacking. They're attacking the people they claim to be protecting themselves from. But see, that's just happening in their deluded minds. So essentially people that should be in a nut house are running your country or your government in some form. It's not, or again, just so out to lunch or captured or bored or ineffective that they've let these policies proliferate and in fact allow shilling for it. Or denialism, it's not happening. It's not happening the way you think. It's actually going to get better. Just you wait. 3 years later, way worse. But that jive talker, they can talk a good game as long as it's not totally obvious, like places like Cuba. And then, then it's the riot police or whatever other innovative means they come up with to quell a riot or disperse a crowd or who knows what. They don't care, I'm sure. Probably not even half of it's reported. So if you have it, if it's a culture captured situation, it's a transitional place, it's going bad places. It's essentially a gas chamber. So it's about just realizing that and moving on. You don't have to asphyxiate in a place that is spinelessly sadistic in sort of the neglectful way, because it is negligence to not have anything that you could do to support yourself based on a place that would otherwise be accessible, but isn't, based on their politics and their implementation of terroristic measures against the native population. So these are cultural war crimes in this day. And the people here, they're the definition of cultural war criminals. Now, in one of my previous lectures, I mentioned psychology. And I do think there's been some advances made over the last 30 years. Not all of them have been bad. Some psychologists help people in certain ways. I have a little bit more understanding and compassion. I think they have newer schools which are good, but just realize secularists only have psychologists. They're their substitute for priest or religion, which is very limited and pretty misguided. I mean, it has good analysis, but it doesn't really have any right healing methods, especially because it's still so self-centered. It's so egoically grounded. And you're constantly dealing with yourself, and you don't really feel like it's optional. Because they have this materialist grip that they take to the metaphysical, and that's just bad practice. The better way of seeing it, the more abstract, depersonalized way of seeing it is there is skillfulness and unskillfulness. There is suffering, and there is the premature ending of suffering with right action, right attitude. So you see how much more dynamic that is? So it's not somebody sitting outside of you critiquing you trying to understand yourself, and it becoming some type of affirmative process where you're really focusing mostly on unwholesomeness because it's a problem, right? It's a problem that needs to be solved. You have this you don't like, you have that you don't like, you wish you had this, you see? You're just going through unskillful comparisons. I scroll all day and my monkey mind sees all of these wonderful, beautiful pictures, and my life is a total disaster. And this is like the most excruciating thing that can happen for, let's say, subnormally biased, jealous people. Like, it just triggers their jealousy and envy. I mean, some people are just ignoble by birth in the form of their personality. Some people have underdeveloped personality traits. Some people are still stuck in the narcissistic states of underdevelopment. It really sort of is a mystery how your personality develops, and how some people don't have such a terrible narcissistic stage, and some people just never get out of it. You see, a lot of these things are random. Now, the practice is what you can bring to the table. But of course, it has to be right practice and not over-focusing on unwholesome things, essentially, which is self-analysis. And I mean, you can turn it into self-awareness, which would be Satori. But they take a longer way to get there. They first have to know what they're dealing with, but they might also be deluding themselves. They might also be conducting false positives. They have this need to categorize other people and put them in categories, and we can see how closely they're related to these artificial class systems that are misused for political reasons, giving subnormally, let's say, motivated people for worldly mean reasons, a method by which they try to delegitimize an opposition just based on framings that they set up in the first place. Everybody is far right of them. Why? All the boogeymen are on the right. All the good things on the left. That's what the zombies and NPCs have been programmed to believe. So if they're in the power position to say that the other side is reincarnation of this ancient evil, the worst of the worst, the madman, the causes of the war, isn't that like mud slinging, sort of delegitimizing them on some type of weird mystical historical level? Channeling that agitprop of a memory war onto contemporary people that have, again, just been, thanks an alternative or artificial class system, can automatically be put in the little pre-manufactured boxes. So people that are engaged in that, now some people would say they're left, but there's right as well. They both use it. They think this is like the hip political science. So that, I would say that in a forum, that you could classify that as illicit or criminal activity from a psychological, psychological, political standpoint. So someone engaged in that is engaging in a political racket that has essentially moved democracy towards illiberal democracy, or maintaining the pretense of democracy while being an illiberal democracy, while using these classist tropes and applying them. So you're essentially dealing with a political criminal at that point. So someone who is engaged in a method that is criminal, is used by criminals, has been used by criminals in the past, have been used by criminals in totalitarian regimes, has been used by maniacs that have attacked civil societies across the board in the West. So anybody can pick it up. Like what I just described, watch who picks it up and who doesn't. Like a gun, anybody can pick that gun up and play that with different labels. Like you could reverse it and apply it to them if you wanted to play them at the same game. But I thought we were all better than that. See, my hope is that by raising public awareness, they'll just gravitate away from it because it's less effective, because it is less legitimate. That is all. I have no axe to grind. My purpose is that, or my intent is that better civic leaders get into positions and aren't being delegitimized with these essentially criminal methods. But they're not criminal, they're illicit, right? The bill hasn't been passed yet. I mean, do we need to pass a bill? Maybe the public opinion can just update its sensitivity towards these types of illicit programs and distance themselves from them and from the people that think they can get away with doing that in this time, which is supposed to be a better time than the old times when people pulled off these things and created a lot of bad results for the most amount of people. But yeah, in the realm of politics, would schemers and egotistical and not really caring too much about other people type people employ methods that work if people aren't paying attention? Would they do it? They want to become mayor and there's some other guy and he wants to be the good guy in this weird left-right game. Would he use it? Why not? Like there's people who use all different types of methods. They might not even care that who the other guy is. They're just trying to do something to make themselves stand out. But I think they should stand out for being the type of person that would perpetuate these types of illicit activities. But yeah, coming back to psychiatry, so it's really sad to think that secularists, all they have is their psychologists. And their psychologists themselves are better at analysis than they are at healing. And they also don't really have the virtues. They don't have the 5 precepts. They don't have much more than that. They don't add to the 5 precepts even if they have them. So you're essentially dealing with a worldling that knows a thing or two about human behavior, but might use that for their own purposes, including throwing their hat in with a bunch of people that want to conduct continuous public relations campaigns on false premises. So that's not really beneficial to civil society long term, is it? You have more or less strategic scramblers, egg scramblers mixed into the formula that don't really belong in the process, but if they're used can again, manipulate people, be bad influences, essentially, for hire. How do we make this person appear more credible? Well, our polling suggests that if you wear a blue tie and don't pick your nose, you'll be 2 points ahead in the polls. So it doesn't matter if the dude is, straight out of prison or running trucks of poison or who knows what. That's the expert, the consultant on the payroll. Doesn't go anywhere if an election's won. Keeps the lid on any type of problems with the public. Doesn't do much. But that type of people, like lobbyists, then that's your political scientists and psychologists or whatever. Again, you have to realize, think for a second how little morals these type of people must have. I mean, how little respect they have too. Just how much they don't care. So that's part of it. I don't want to throw them all in that pod. That's actually the exceptionally bad ones, but it does help to know what you're dealing with and potentially the people involved in it. So to come back to the point is their analysis has a certain amount of value. I do like it for its clarity and its neutrality, but it's certainly not the end-all be-all. And categorizing yourself or allowing yourself to be categorized is something that should not be taken lightly, because it's an egoic exercise and it can also be detrimental. They psychologically classify you just like they politically classify you. You're this type of person. You're unacceptable to the group. You're strange, right? You're autistic. Or they come up with these types of things and then they stigmatize you. It's like calling someone an alcoholic because they might get drunk every once in a while, but they don't see the point in defining themselves by that. Or I'm a recovering alcoholic. It's like you can never get away from that label. But if you've changed, if you don't think about it, you don't have to think of yourself in those terms, do you? But outside experts that like to be dominant, like to be in the know, like to determine things, they like to do that. They like to one-up people with their superior knowledge, because all that bookishness, they have that material mindset. The more books they read and understand, the better they are, they think, in material terms. Like, I have read 100,000 books, and this person has only read 10,000. But it doesn't matter what books I read. This guy could have read the right 10,000 books, and it's like 100 times more wise than they are. But they have the numbers and the seniority and all of that. So you can see how little small people like that, like worldly small people, would also like to get in those superior relationships with inferiors and help them. So a lot of them are playing games, and they know it. They just think they're more expert at it. And so be advised. I think they're useful to a point, and that's about it. And they're a mixed bag. But some of the things they say are insightful. You just have to pick and choose. Let's also not forget that a certain contingent of them are also subnormal in their proclivities, and they really, really want to flip the script on so-called normal or supernormal society. And so they try to normalize the abnormal because they have that sadistic tendency. And so they're disguising their sadism with some type of social crusade, or again, trying to get one up on people that aren't screwed up like they are, but they're the doctor in the relationship. You see what I'm saying? So the good thing about monks is they have their precepts and they take that seriously. The student-teacher relationship isn't really there. You might consider yourself a student. They might consider themselves a teacher. They might not. But what they're not going to try to do is justify their malformed, narcissistically invested selves in some type of power play on you, unless they're some type of charlatan like a lot of these psychologists are. So be advised, you have to read people just like anywhere else, and they're pretty, some of them are pretty smooth. They put in extra effort to appear normal or appear slightly above your class to maintain some professional distance or elevation, but as far as precepts go, they might not have that under control. And so what can they really tell you in forms of some type of guidance or wisdom when really all they can do is repeat what they learned in a book? And mostly of the diagnosis kind, not of the, not much in the form of recommendations. But again, maybe, it depends. You might get lucky. Some people don't go the wrong way, they go actually the better way. Some of them actually move towards a religious practice, but they start off the way I just described. So it is a scale, as they say, it's a gray scale. And some are moving upwards and some are going down. But not in worldly terms. See, a lot of times that's inverted. Worldly terms, they go up, but spiritual terms, they go down. It's like a paradox they're not willing to face. They're not philosophical enough to do that, so that makes them useful to a lot of different organizations, doesn't it? Have different directives, different things they want to do. Let's sell this trope. How do we sell this trope better? Some of them will do it. So keep your eyes out there. Also, don't be taking any of these medicines unless absolutely necessary. If you do get on them, try to get off them, but do so in a responsible way. I mean, of course, some people are really messed up. You got to know for yourself what you can take and what you can't. But I do know a lot of people get into it and then they can't get out of it, and then it really is a lifelong dependency. So take of that what you will. This is another thing. A psychologist, they're not used to people or from the outside critiquing the entire industry or questioning what they've thunk up for themselves as the progressive thing. But civic society should constantly keep them, keep an eye on them, and also question if they come up with a radical exterminationist level nonsense, then yeah, you should not tolerate that. In fact, it's not tolerated in other places. People are arrested in other places for doing a lot less things, attempting a lot less outrageous behavior. Just so you know, like the side that's going to push the nukes on you, they don't tolerate any nonsense of the kind that is all over the place, and yet they're selling that as modern when, again, you pull someone out of the rainforest and they would shriek in horror. So who's wrong? Maybe it's the eggheads. Just a random guess, but I would say that's probably what you're looking at. So calling something like that illicit is the first step, and then the second step is taking right action. And not because they think you should, but because it's the right thing to do. And yet in all the books they read, all the degrees they had, that fact seems to have eluded them somehow. How could that be? How smart are they again? Yeah, I guess as smart as safe crackers are. But if they're robbing your national jewels, they're not really worth it, are they?